Hi everybody, welcome to the show. Hello everyone, welcome back to Raising A to Z, this YouTube channel all about homeschooling. My name is Amanda. I am a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, and last week I started a Q&A session where I was answering the questions that I get asked all the time. The things that come up in conversations with strangers, with new homeschoolers, people who are interested in homeschooling. These are kind of the questions that come up again and again and again. And so this is part 2 of that whole conversation. So if you want to see part 1, I will put the link up here. It is available to watch now. And I am excited to get into the next kind of bunch of questions that I get asked all the time as a homeschooling parent. Before I do, if you guys are new to homeschooling, you're starting to homeschool, you want to plan your homeschool year, you're definitely going to want to check out the Essential Homeschool Planner. This planner was designed by me, a teacher-turned-homeschool mom, to be a planner that will help you plan and stay organized and stay on top of your homeschooling to have a great and successful year. It has all kinds of pages full of everything from reading logs to daily schedules, unit study planners, weekly plans, monthly plans, annual plans, login information, contact, everything you need to stay on top and organized to have a great homeschool year. So if you're interested in this, it is available on Amazon and on our website. I'll definitely leave a link down below because you'll definitely want to check this out. Like I said, this is part 2. So this is actually question number 7. In part 1, we answered the question, so who do you check in on? Because people are curious on like how we are overseen as homeschoolers. And this kind of goes back to that question. So the question number 7 is, so the government gives you homeschool curriculum, right? No. So in Ontario, once you have either pulled your kids from school, once you've decided to homeschool and you've pulled them out of the system, you are on your own. There is no curriculum that is given to you. You basically get to pick what you want. There are thousands and thousands of homeschool curriculum options out there for every subject, ranging from super inexpensive to very, very expensive. And you as a homeschool parent get to choose which curriculum you want to use. Now, I know that is definitely not the case in some provinces. I believe Quebec has really strict curriculum requirements. And I think there are also requirements on what you can spend money on in BC from the government's money allotment. For us in Ontario, where I live, we don't have any curriculum that is given to us by the Ontario government. There is the provincial curriculum, which is the guidelines that they have for their school system, and you can choose to follow them if you want. I don't. I kind of just tend to move forward and move on with life. I find sometimes the curriculum documents are a little low in their expectations, and I find a lot of homeschoolers agree with me. So we just kind of do our own thing, and as long as our kids are learning how to learn and enjoying what they're doing, we don't worry about them. But you definitely want to check into your area if there are any requirements on curriculum or restrictions on curriculum or anything like that. Number 8, so if you don't use government curriculum, what do you use? I have a whole video. I will put the links down below, but basically I've already done videos on like specifically what curriculum we're using and why we're using it, all of that. So if you're interested for kindergarten, grade 2 for next year coming up, that'll be down below. But basically I only buy curriculum for math and language. Occasionally I'll pick up a unit study here and there. There's so many options out there that are free. There's so many things that my kids want to study that there isn't necessarily a curriculum for. And so that's how I do it. But basically how we do it is we do language and math as a curriculum, and then we pick unit studies and topics to study for a month at a time. And that has been working incredibly well for us. And sometimes I will buy like a packet here or there, or I'll find some printables that are free to download. But that has been working for us, and that is how we kind of continue on with our homeschooling for the foreseeable future, because it has just been working so well for us with 2 kids in kindergarten and 2nd grade, going into kindergarten and 2nd grade. So that's what we do. We love it. And if you want to see specifically what books we're using, that'll be down below. Is it expensive? Question number 9. I think it's something that holds a lot of homeschoolers back from homeschooling, is the fear that it is expensive. I did see somewhere that someone recommended that you have $1,000 per child per subject as a budget, and I think that is exorbitantly high. For the majority of families, that is completely unrealistic. If you can do that and you can afford that, then by all means do that. That's just not a reality in our home or in pretty much any home of any homeschooler I know in our area. Homeschooling can be as expensive or as cheap as you want it to be. The more expensive it is, usually the less prep you as a parent have to do. So that is something to take into consideration. Math is a great example because there's so many price points on math. You have everything from Jump Math, which I think runs about $25 a kid for the year, all the way up to some programs that are like $400, $500, $600, $700 for a year per child. You have such a huge span. So really you can pick anything in a math curriculum that works for you. Like, it is totally possible to find a math curriculum at any budget point. The ones that are going to be at the lower end are usually going to require you to maybe do a little bit of research if there's topics that you're not familiar with, or it's going to have like, you're going to have to prep some activities, or it's not going to be super hands-on. That's going to be kind of the simpler, more basic programs are going to be at the bottom. Super hands-on, lots of manipulatives. Basically, you just open it and pop in a DVD or log on to a website and it does it for you. Going to be on the high end. And then everything in between. And then there's also like so much free stuff out there too. I will say, so for example, again, math is a perfect example. There are tons and tons of free math units and math worksheets out there. You could hypothetically teach a math curriculum for free just by printing off free worksheets online. It is possible, but that is a lot of work. As someone who makes a lot of their own unit studies, just doing science and social studies is a lot of work. Doing a whole math program would be completely exhausting to piece together and make sure you're covering all the topics you want to cover and the scope that you want to cover, and that is all at the level that is age appropriate for your child. That can be really, it is possible to do it for free. It could be really exhausting though. Sometimes it is worth it to pay a little bit to get a program that makes your life as a homeschool parent a little bit easier. You know what I'm saying? There's tons of curriculum options out there at every price point. The one thing I don't recommend when it comes to curriculum options are all-in-one programs. All-in-one programs are basically you buy a kit for a kid and it contains everything for that grade. Math, science, social studies, language arts, everything. Whatever subjects they consider in their all-in-one, it is covered. And I don't recommend them because I find most parents feel super overwhelmed because it's basically recreating school at home and it's not realistic in a homeschool situation. Most parents don't use all of it. They get either there's a section that's their kids don't find interesting, there's parts that are just too advanced, too low, because it's basically assuming that everyone in this age bracket is going to be at this level, and that's not always the case. And third, they are super expensive compared to like buying a unit here or there or buying individual curriculum for different subjects. They tend to be the programs that top out at the top and parents use the least amount of them. So unless you are dead set on an all-in-one program, it might be worth your time to kind of find a few curriculums to work together instead of an all-in-one. Some people love the all-in-one, but I do find a lot of people who love the all-in-one still do a lot of supplementing or still kind of take out one subject at least and replace it with another. So that's not super cost effective. Like I said, you can homeschool for almost free all the way up to thousands of dollars a kid. So many options. It's really what you want to spend. Do you get a tax deduction? I get this question so often and I'm very surprised. When I started, I was very surprised. Now I understand why. In Ontario, where we live, we do not get tax deductions. We don't get any money from the government for pulling our kids. Nothing. We get nothing financially in return for pulling our kids from school. And we're okay with it. Let me explain. In BC, which a lot of people consider like one of the best homeschooling provinces, you do get money when you decide to homeschool your kids. There's different streams and different processes depending on what level of homeschooling you do in terms of like how much oversight you have, but you do get some money. We don't get that in Ontario. And so people who are coming from BC to Ontario are very confused by this. The reason we don't get money and we're okay with it in Ontario is because we have zero oversight, which means we do not report to anybody. We have no testing, no reporting, no one looking over our shoulder, And those tend to be the strings that come with getting a tax return or getting a deduction or getting money to spend on curriculum or whatever. So we as Ontario people, as Ontarians, we're okay with not getting money because we are free to do what we want. So in BC, depending on, like, there's kind of tiers of oversight. The higher the oversight, the more money you can get. The highest oversight sometimes has a teacher coming into your home every month to see what you're teaching, how your kids are advancing. So you'd have someone literally coming to your house regularly to see what's going on and making sure that you're teaching the way they deem satisfactory, but you would get the most amount of money. And then there's others where it's very little oversight, but you get less money. There's a whole spectrum, but then there's also lots of like strings attached to how that money can be spent. So for example, sometimes the money, depending on your province and your area, the money can't be spent on anything that is any religious undertones, or it can't be spent on picture books or books in general that would be like just reading books. Or if you buy books, they have to go back to the school system at a certain time. So there's like a whole bunch of strings attached to the money. And in Ontario, because we don't get any money, we have no strings. And so I will take the string-free ease of living here and the rules here in exchange for not having to get any money. Like I said in the question before, you can homeschool at any budget. And so we just stick to what we allocate for homeschooling in our family. And I will happily not get that tax credit because it's worth my sanity and my peace of mind and just my ease, right? Question 11, how do you homeschool on one income? I recently just did a whole video on this. Again, I'll put the link down below because it is a question I get asked so often. My husband is a full-time teacher. He has been a teacher for 13 or 14 years now, full-time in the public board in our area. So we basically just live off of his income. And a lot of people are just shocked, especially in this world, in this economy, how do we make that work? I do a whole video on how we make that work and the tips that I have for working on one income. But basically it boils down to always looking for a deal, always making priorities about what we spend our money on, and always finding a way to do something frugally, whether that is looking for deals, coupons, promo codes, free days. We're always trying to focus on making sure that we're staying within our budget. And sometimes that means saying no to things. Sometimes that means we have to save up for things. Sometimes we wait for things to go on sale. The reality is that we're really good at prioritizing what we need and what we don't need. That's kind of like the simplified version of how we make it work. We also really love to take advantage of free things, whether it's free community events, whether it's the library, which we're at the library all the time, free classes, free things at the end of the people's driveways. Like we love a good freebie, a good bargain, and we kind of are always keeping our eyes out for that. And we also are always looking for ways that we can make things work double duty in our budget. So oftentimes our kids' Christmas presents or Easter gifts or whatever or birthday presents are actually something that they can use in their homeschooling. If you want more tips, check it out down below. Who does the homeschooling in your house? Well, it's a group effort. I do the majority of the more structured academic workbook time. So obviously I am home Monday through Friday. I do the majority of like the sit down workbook time. I'm also the one who does a lot of like the organizing of what we're studying. So for example, when I ask my kids what we want to study, they usually give me a list, and then I kind of decide what month we're studying things in. To the amazement of my children, for example, I will decide that we're going to study oceans in March because I know that in March we're going to go to Toronto to the aquarium and to the ROM, where we'll get to see an exhibit on whales. My kids are mind blown by that kind of planning. But that's what I do. I would like plan out when we're going to do certain topics throughout the year. And so that's kind of majority of what I do. I do like the language arts, social studies, science, and math kind of as like the majority of it. And then My husband comes in and does a lot of the more spontaneous stuff. He's really good at like, hey, we're gonna go on this adventure, we're gonna do this thing, I saw this cool thing on video, I want you guys to check it out. He's super good at that. He's really great at finding like videos on the topic that we're studying, or ideas or activities on whatever we're studying. He's more spontaneous than I am. I'm definitely the planner, so he's really good at that. He also takes care of the majority of our like music program because he is a music teacher. So obviously that's his purview, and he can teach that. But it is definitely like a group effort, especially since we try to make our home be an environment where everything is learning and we're always learning. So there are definitely times in our home where I'm not teaching and he's got more ideas and he's explaining things and showing the kids information and reading them books. That's more of his thing. And then there are times where I'm doing more of the academic stuff, like where we do a very interesting split. Basically, we just consider everything learning, so everything is always kind of just moving forward and they're always learning. That's how we do it in our household. Some people have different splits depending on their families and their dynamics, but that's what works in our house. And then the last question we get is, do we need a lot of room to homeschool? Do we need a homeschool room? And I think this is like a social media thing, because you see a lot of people who have these like beautiful homeschool rooms and these beautiful spaces that are like learning spaces. And it makes people feel like they can't homeschool in a condo, they can't homeschool in an apartment, they need to have a big house to homeschool. And it's not true. Our house, where I'm filming right now, is just over 1,000 square feet. It is a 3-bedroom bungalow, and we homeschool in it very comfortably. In fact, about 2 years ago, both the girls had their own room, and we did all of our homeschooling at the kitchen table. We basically had some filing cabinets where we kept all their materials, and we just homeschooled at the kitchen table. Every day we pull it out, we do the work, and then we put it away. It worked. A lot of families do their homeschooling at the kitchen table or at like the living room couch on a coffee table. That is completely okay, totally acceptable, and highly encouraged. If you want to do that, by all means do it. For us, about 2 years ago, we decided to put the kids into 1 bedroom and convert one of the rooms to a room that we call the activity room. Not so much because we wanted a homeschool room, more so because the way our house is laid out, we didn't have a play area on the main floor, so the kids were always playing in the room and they were moving stuff back and forth between the bedrooms, and it was getting really, or they were playing on the kitchen floor and it was getting very messy. So we decided to move the kids into bunk beds in 1 room, and so we had 1 room that was like a playroom, and we added a table that can we added a table, and that has become our homeschool activity room. So when we do our homeschooling, we pull out the table, put their workbooks out, do their workbooks, and they have a little section on the shelf that is for their books. The rest of the room is basically a playroom. So our kids share a room to have that space. It's about priorities. It's about what works for your family. So for us, having them share a room for now and having a play space on our main floor made a lot more sense than them both having their own room. But we also are open to the idea of changing things up one day and having a different space for them, especially as they get older and they don't necessarily need as many things, right? Because especially like at this age, like when they're doing math, they have a lot of manipulatives, like a lot of little things, they're counters or measures or different like hands-on things. As they get older and they're not needing as many of those things, we have the option of moving around. And we do take our workbooks to places with us all the time. We go to the library, we've taken our workbooks to Starbucks, Chapters, and done our work there. And so you don't need a lot of space. You just basically need a way to organize it and keep it kind of contained in an area for when you need it, and make it easily accessible. Like I said, a lot of people homeschool on their kitchen table and just have like a rolly cart nowadays, which they weren't really a thing when I was homeschooling at the kitchen table. They are definitely a thing now. They're very easy to find, and I would totally have a rolly cart if that was what my situation was. But you don't need a lot of space. You don't need a big yard. You can use trails, you can use your library, you can use all kinds of other areas to learn. You don't necessarily need to have a huge learning space in your home. It's a nice bonus, but it's not necessary and not required. So don't let that hold you back from homeschooling. I think those are all the big questions I have been asked recently. If you have any other questions or questions you're asked all the time and you just don't know how to answer it, leave a comment below. I would love to answer it, and maybe I'll make a part 3, who knows. And I can't wait to see you guys back in a couple weeks. Until then, make sure you follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok, and I will see you guys soon. Bye.